Welcome to Connections and Conversations, an advocacy arena podcast, working to increase civic engagement and strengthen our communities. When I think about things that make up community, I think about the people, then about their common communal connections like schools, churches, and other social activities, sports, arts, and that sort of thing. Collectively, these things contribute to creating a cohesive and supportive community environment, and it fosters connections and mutual respect for one another. By fostering regular engagement and participation, communities develop the capacity, knowledge, and relationships necessary to address complex challenges effectively. It helps them to adapt to changing circumstances within the community. The concept of community art centers has been around for over a century. The idea of community art centers has evolved over time from early church-based gatherings to more formalized institutions focused on making art accessible to all members of a community. Now, community arts doesn't just mean access, because some will say that, art's for everyone, but not even everyone says that because case in point, Nelson Rockefeller. And yes, he is one of those Rockefellers. He was the 41st vice president under Ford. He said that arts were for the many, but could not be entrusted to the many. Imagine that. But community art is of and by the people, of a place and culture. Sometimes it's facilitated by professional artists, but it reflects the values, concerns, and meaning of living in that place or culture. There's usually always a symbiotic relationship between arts programs and community development. A lot of achievements were born out of the civil rights movement, and one of them was a piece of legislation known as the National Foundation of the Arts and the Humanities Act. It was passed in 1965 and declared that arts and the humanities belong to all the people of the United States. The Arts Endowment is the only funder, public or private, that provides access to the arts in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. They support activities that include performances, exhibitions, healing arts, and arts education programs. But another thing that happened in the mid-60s, shortly after the assassination of Malcolm X, a poet, writer, and artist, Amara Barakwa, opened the Black Arts Repertory Theater and School in Harlem, a move that is viewed by many as the start of the Black Arts movement. Now, although the Black Arts movement formally ended in the mid-70s, its influence endures. The movement laid the groundwork for contemporary Black art and culture, inspired new generation of artists, writers, and musicians. The movement highlighted the importance of diverse representation in the arts and sparked discussions about race and identity that remain relevant and necessary in today's cultural landscape. Because it focused on self-expression and cultural pride and continues to inspire younger artists. The message that art can be a powerful tool for change still resonates across generations. The Black Arts Movement was more than an artistic movement. It was a celebration of identity, resilience, and community. By creating art that reflected their lives and experiences, Black artists challenged societal norms and inspired change. Their legacy reminds us of the power of creativity to unite, empower, and transform. So today's conversation is with someone who knows this all too well, Dr. Randy Westbrook, the Executive Director of the Richmond Area Arts Council in Kentucky. So hello, Randy. How are you today?
Hey, Disha. How you doing? I'm doing pretty well.
Awesome. I am so glad that you could carve out a little time to talk to me today. And I know you know a little something about music.
Yeah.
And so I want you to just kind of tell our audience a little bit about your background, what you do now as the executive director, and then a little of your background.
Yeah, so I'm the executive director of the Richmond Area Arts Council in Richmond, Kentucky. It's just south of Lexington, Kentucky, although we're not a suburb of Lexington at all. We have Eastern Kentucky University here, as well as Berea College in the county, as well in Madison County, Kentucky. I serve as the director of the Arts Council. I'm also still an active musician in the area. I book musical events separate from the Arts Council too, so stay pretty busy. Yeah.
Yes. I want you to tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming the director of the Arts Council.
I started playing the piano when I was 5, kept taking lessons with that. I was in band, choir, etc. I knew that music was what I wanted to do from about the age of 7 was when I told people that. So about 2 years after I started playing. I grew up in Richmond, Kentucky, and I did my undergrad at Murray State University in Western Kentucky, where I was a music major. I went to school on a music scholarship, which was good because I wasn't doing too great in math and science at the time. I went on to Murray State in Western Kentucky, and that led to me going to grad school at the University of Memphis in Tennessee.
When I met you.
Well, I met you coming back around the other way because I was finishing up my PhD at the University of Memphis.
Right.
I had an adjunct position at MTSU at that point in their music department. I did that for 1 year and ended up coming back to Kentucky. My mother was sick at the time, had pancreatitis, and just a lot of different factors led into me coming back. But I played a lot of music while I was in graduate school. Memphis was kind of like coming home to me in a lot of ways. A lot of the music that I was influenced by, the blues and soul music and rock and roll type of stuff from Memphis, was very influential for me all along. Even though I had a classical background, I was taking classical lessons, but I didn't really tell my teacher about, all the clubs I was playing at. It was like a double life.
Oh,
Yeah, you couldn't.
right. She didn't want you to develop any bad habits.
Yeah, because you get this classical technique, and when you start playing other styles of music, you start doing all kinds of other things on the keyboard. You slide on notes, you play glissandos, and it's like, I guess, the Jerry Lee Lewis thing where I didn't do a lot of that, but where you
Okay.
finger across the keys like that. So those aren't taught. You don't play Mozart that way.
Right.
It's not as bad for pianists, people who play the piano, as like vocalists. Sometimes vocal teachers are really tough on their students, won't let them sing other styles because they won't be able to sing opera or something. Although that's changing now. There's a lot more
Right.
blurring of the lines between musical theater and opera, and being able to be versatile is being seen as more of a valuable thing now. I mean, I was always in jazz band in college too. So anyway, there's this thing with classical music where you kind of learn the piece and you learn the technique, but you don't do any improvisation. And I was always interested in improvisation as well. That means making up stuff on the spot. I still think to this day, anybody who's majoring in music should have some ability with improvisation. I mean, they don't have to be a virtuoso jazz musician, but just being able to improvise on something.
Right. Let's continue this journey. So you taught as an adjunct at Middle Tennessee State University, which has an awesome music department there. Then you went back to Richmond
Mhm.
and you taught at a couple of the universities around there.
Yeah, so I was an adjunct for quite a while. I taught at Eastern Kentucky University. I taught at Midway College. I taught at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. At one point, doing about 7 classes a semester. There's a lot of cutting of the arts going on now, and that was definitely happening.
So it caused you to have to kind of rethink and recalibrate a lot. And we were having a lot of conversations around your recalibration.
Yeah, it was a challenging time because it was at 3 schools. I also had a church job, which I still have to this day. And I was playing about 100 gigs a year at that time with a band called Superfecta. Not during the whole time, but through a lot of it.
Right.
A lot of weddings, a lot of private gigs, kind of a cover band situation. But I just wanted to have a life in the arts. That was kind of the goal.
And then eventually you landed at the Arts Council. So tell me a little bit about the Arts Council and the significance of it in your community or a community.
Yeah, I landed this job in 2018, 7 years on February 5th.
Wow. So an anniversary.
Yeah. Actually, if I make it to July 21st, I'll been the longest serving executive director they've had.
Congratulations. That's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. It was a great job to get, and it's a great job to have because it kind of brought everything together that I've been working up to. And
Hmm.
every major city should have an arts council, just like it should have a chamber of commerce, just like it should have a public library. That's just part of community.
Community, activity, and outlets.
Yeah. And so we do a lot of activities. I've been going to see donors this week quite a bit, so I've been talking about it a lot, but we do a lot of programs for kids, a lot of programs for adults, musical performances. We have theater productions. We have dance classes. We've had all kinds. We've had ballroom dance. I was talking to somebody about doing tango dance lessons. We've had belly dance lessons.
I've always had an interest in tango.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, and the music too.
Right.
Astor Piazzolla is a musician I like quite a bit. He's a famous tango guy, but music and dance ties together, and a lot of our events bring all those things together. Like when we do an art scala, we'll have a dance group perform, and then we'll also have musicians, and then we might have some visual artists as part of the silent auction too, who donate some things. And then, of course, theater. We'll have a theater group do a skit or something like that. So something like that can bring all that together. We try to do a big event every month.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it sounds like a really rich program that you have there. Of course, arts are very important in our development as human beings. And I know that you have this annual event that has gone on for some time. And I really wanted you to tell me a little bit about this event, what's involved, and kind of how it came about.
Yeah, we just had the Evening of Togetherness event on January 25th. We did it the first time in 2020. It's kind of a precursor to Black History Month.
Uh-huh.
At the time, that worked for the schedule because I tended to do a Mardi Gras event, which also ties into Black History, by the way. But we always do it kind of to kick off Black History Month. And I was approached by Dr. Kathy Bullock, who was the chair of the music department at Berea College.
Oh, I'm familiar with Berea. I think I told you I have one of my first cousins graduated from Berea.
Yeah, no, that college has a lot of history. It was one of the first universities that I know of that allowed African American students in the 1800s, even before the end of the Civil War. Then at another point, they reversed that, and then they changed it back about 1900. But yeah, it has a long history of being a school that supports civil rights.
It's a pretty cool school.
Yeah.
Because I happened to go to my cousin's graduation and I was very, very impressed.
Yeah. So yeah, she had been head of the music department for about 8 years, I think, or quite a bit longer. But yeah, she wanted to do a program that was a collaboration between the Richmond-Madison County branch of the NAACP and the Richmond Area Arts Council. The two organizations had talked about collaborating for a long time, but nothing had really ever happened. So we decided to make that happen.
Good on ya.
We tried. So this was 2020 in January, and about 2 months before the pandemic. Yeah, we had it in our building. We have a building here. This used to be an Episcopal church. So we've got an art gallery in the bottom floor, and then we have a performance space upstairs. And we had it in the performance space, and yeah, it filled up. It was sold out, and I could hold about 140 people at that time. And so we were excited about that. And then the pandemic hit 2 months later. We did a little something in 2021 because we did kind of an online presentation, some live performances that went out in 2021, but the pandemic was still raging at that time. And then we had to shut down again. We opened and closed and opened and had to close again. So we couldn't do the program in 2022. But we did do the art show. I should specify, this is a musical performance, but we also have a visual art presentation. And the idea was to honor African-American musicians and artists in Central Kentucky. And that was the goal. And in 2023, we did it again at our building, and it sold out again. And that was great. I was glad we were able to keep the continuation of it going. And then in 2024, there's a place called the EKU Center for the Arts. And it's a big venue that we're lucky to have in Richmond. You know, Willie Nelson, Aretha Franklin. A lot of people have played there. Gladys Knight, Peter Frampton, Bob Dylan. you name it. It's a big place. So we got the lobby for that last year, and that went really well. They were very gracious with us to give us the venue. They supported the event. And it got big enough that we were actually able to move into the EKU Center main hall this year.
Ooh, big time.
So it holds about 2,100 people, but that it's got two levels. So those were obviously shut off. And so we just had the bottom part reserved.
Mhm.
We had about 80 performers because we have a number of choirs who perform on this. So they were kind of on the right hand side, and then the people that bought tickets pretty much filled up that middle section, and we had a few people over to the left. So it was very respectable. It's not often you can get a local like that can,
Draw that many people.
yeah, I'm not trying to brag on it, but there's a lot of talent
Right.
on the bill.
Anyone you wanna shout out?
Well, Angelina Ugly is a great saxophone player. Corey Jackson is a classically trained violinist who also improvises. Kathy performed. Dr. Keith McCutcheon, who is the choir director of Kentucky State University, was there. Kentucky State is a HBCU in Kentucky.
Awesome.
So his choir was there, and he performed. He's a accomplished jazz pianist. Lachelle Allen performed. She's lives here locally too, but she's a opera singer, professional opera singer. She was just with the Chicago Opera a couple months ago, and she was back here and performed with us. So Vera Stone Street Page is a local performer with the VSP band, kind of R&B soul group. Mary Jackson, jazz singer. Whit Whitaker, he's head of the NAACP in Lexington and also used to run the famous Lyric Theater up there in Lexington that's been around for a long time.
Oh, so a creative. Okay.
Yeah, we had a group called Empower Rhythm out of Lexington, which is middle and high school kids who study African drumming, West African drumming, and they performed.
Wow.
The Madison Middle School step team performed. First Baptist Church. That's a church in Richmond. We have our first African American mayor now in Richmond, and he's also the pastor of that church. But so the First Baptist liturgical dancers performed. We had choirs out of Berea, Union Church, and First Christian Church in Berea.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we wanted to emphasize this year, we changed the title from an evening of elegance to an evening of togetherness. When we started working on it in October, that was our plan. And we kept that title.
Why not?
The Evening of Togetherness. And the idea with this was most of the performers had been African American on the program, except for me. I play every year in my trio.
Right.
So I wanted to kind of change that. Remember, we started working on this in late October.
Mm-hmm.
That was the idea this time. So yeah, so a lot of the people from Union Church and First Christian Church, and also on the Madison Middle Step team and the Empower Rhythm, we had quite a few white performers too this year, but that was the idea. The idea was bringing people together. That was the concept of this one. And I think we achieved that. And so I felt very good about the performance.
Awesome. Absolutely. And you sent me a link so that we could watch it and share some things about the Richmond Arts Center. As we start to wrap up, I am wanting to give you an opportunity just to share some closing thoughts about the significance of art communities and maybe some future goals or plans that you may have for your art center there.
Well, we do a lot of things, but this program is an example of how anyone in your community, I would encourage anyone to make these collaborations happen.
Within the community, yes.
To not kind of sit back and wait on the media or anybody to feed you anything or what you should like or whatever. Find all the talent in your community and make things happen. It's not up to California or New York or anywhere else to change a community. You do it where you're at.
Right.
Yeah, that's how you do that. That's what the future is going to be in a lot of ways is a lot of things happened in the 1960s, but they didn't happen everywhere, and we're still working on it, and so that's the point, I mean, it's up to the communities to try to make some innovative programming happen. However you do that is up to you, but you just have to know your community. You have to know what's realistic. You have to not get frustrated when not everything goes 100% the way you think it should all the time. You have to be persistent about whatever it is you want to do. But that's a big thing. It's just you don't get to anything special or great without some, everything's not easy. If you want something good to happen, you have to work. There's a lot of work to it.
Absolutely. I really have been honored to have met you and to know you and the work that you do and your passion for it. And I wanted you to talk, like I said, understanding your passion. We talked about it at length, but just briefly, the importance of arts in our education and in our community.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cuts that have been going on all the time about, but it is crucial. Sometimes it's harder to sell it compared to other great organizations that help homeless individuals or women who've been abused. I mean, those organizations need help and should get the help. But I would also argue that arts can be life-saving. I mean, it was for me, and it is for a lot of people, and we need it desperately. Like I said, we can't just get it all through the media. People that are involved in arts tend to do better on their test scores. They tend to do better in school and other subjects. It's healing in so many ways. I mean, I use music. I go through my CD collection, and any point in my life I hear it. I can. But it helps get you through a lot of things. It brings joy. Different people interpret music differently. Like somebody can hear sad music and it makes them feel better. It's all up to the individual. But we need arts, and we need them spread throughout the United States. It doesn't have to be that you have to go to somewhere else to
get a little good art.
You know what I mean? Yeah, everybody should be able to have some. You don't have to live in a big city or a huge city to enjoy the arts.
And that's so important because I grew up in a small rural town, and I really, of course, watching television, I was intrigued by it, but never really got involved because it wasn't accessible to me. And then I went into the military and I got involved in a community theater. And, once you get bit by the bug, of course it's not involved anymore, but it's still something I love and still something that I think everyone should have an opportunity to experience and get involved in more if they like. So I just want to thank you for sharing this wonderful work, important work that you're doing in the community, and congratulate you on your anniversary.
Thank you.
As Dr. Westbrook said, make things happen in your community. Find talent and organizations and foster collaborations. Know your community and what is realistic, and be persistent. It's long-term, incremental work that can bring people and communities together, like this recent event and collaboration of the Madison County NAACP and the Richmond Arts Council, an evening of togetherness. Like Randy said, art is healing and should be accessible to everyone, everywhere. And if you enjoyed this episode, tune in next week when I have a conversation with two extraordinary ladies who are champions of advocacy in two different areas, labor and social work. You don't want to miss this insightful and inspirational conversation. Think about the impact of the labor movement on our quality of life today and the role that social workers continue to play every day to ensure we have healthy, thriving communities. Thank you for listening to Connections and Conversations. This is one of many wonderful interviews that we bring to you to help connect you to a larger community of advocates and changemakers across the country. You'll get a glimpse into the various ways people are making an impact in their communities. My hope is that it will inspire you to get engaged in some small way as well. We can't all do everything, but at this moment in history, we can all do something. What are you doing? One of the things you can do is to continue to listen, subscribe, and share this Advocacy Arena podcast. You can also join and support the growing grassroots Advocacy Arena community in other ways. Join our weekly live chats hosted on Spoutable every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to our Substack to get great articles on important topics and exclusive access to extended interview conversations. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We've got some exciting programming lined up. And keep listening to our regular podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe and give us that all-important 5-star review.